not achieved this do not taste this wine, but sit apart dishonoured, and this they consider a very great disgrace. But as many as have slain not one but many enemies have 2 cups apiece, and drink out of both. There are many diviners among the Scythians, who divine by means of many willow wands, as I will show. They bring great bundles of wands, which they lay on the ground and unfasten, and utter their divinations as they lay the rods down one by one, and while still speaking, they gather up the rods once more and place them together again. This manner of divination is hereditary among them. The Anares, who are hermaphrodites, say that Aphrodite gave them the art of divination, which they practised by means of lime-tree bark. They cut this bark into 3 portions, and prophesy while they braid and unbraid these in their fingers. Whenever the king of the Scythians falls ill, he sends for the 3 most reputable diviners, who prophesy in the aforesaid way, and they generally tell him that such and such a man, naming whoever it may be of the people, has sworn falsely by the king's hearth, for when the Scythians will swear their mightiest oath, it is by the king's hearth that they are accustomed to swear. Immediately, the man whom they allege to have sworn falsely is seized and brought in, and when he comes the diviners accuse him, saying that their divination shows him to have sworn falsely by the king's hearth, and that this is the cause of the king's sickness, and the man vehemently denies that he has sworn falsely. When he denies it, the king sends for twice as many diviners, and if they too, consulting their art, prove him guilty of perjury, then he is instantly beheaded, and his goods are divided among the first diviners. But if the latter diviners acquit him, then the other diviners come, and yet again others. If the greater number of them acquit the man, it is decreed that the first diviners themselves be put to death. And this is how they die. Men yoke oxen to a wagon laden with sticks and tie the diviners up in these, fettering their legs and binding their hands behind him, and gagging them. Then they set fire to the sticks and drive the oxen away, stampeding them. Often the oxen are burnt to death with the diviners, and often the yoke pole of their wagon is burnt through and the oxen escape with a scorching. They burn their diviners for other reasons too, in the way described, calling them false prophets. When the king puts them to death, he does not leave the sons alive either, but kills all the males of the family; the females he does not harm. As for giving sworn pledges to those who are to receive them, this is the Scythian way. They take blood from the parties to the agreement by making a little cut on the body with an awl or knife, and pour it mixed with wine into a big earthenware bowl, into which they then dip a scimitar and arrows and an axe and a javelin, and when this is done those swearing the agreement, and the most honourable of their followers, drink the blood after solemn curses. The burial places of the kings are in the land of the Geri, which is the end of the navigation of the Borysthenes. Whenever their king has died, the Scythians dig a great 4-cornered pit in the ground there. When this is ready, they take up the dead man, his body enclosed in wax, his belly cut open and cleaned and filled with cut marsh plants and frankincense, and parsley and anise seed, and sewn up again, and transport him on a wagon to another tribe. Then those who receive the dead man on his arrival do the same as the royal Scythians, that is, they cut off a part of their ears, shave their heads, make cuts around their arms, tear their foreheads and noses, and pierce their left hands with arrows. From there, the escorts transport the king's body on the wagon to another of the tribes that they rule, and those to whom they have already come follow them, and, having carried the dead man to all in turn, they are at the place of burial, in the country of the Geri, the farthest distant tribe of all under their rule. Then, having laid the body on a couch in the tomb, they plant spears on each side of the body, and lay wooden planks across them, which they then roof over with braided osiers. In the open space which is left in the tomb they bury one of the king's concubines, his cupbearer, his cook, his groom, his squire, and his messenger, after strangling them, besides horses, and firstfruits of everything else, and golden cups, for the Scythians do not use silver or bronze. Having done this, they all build a great barrow of earth, vying eagerly with one another to make this as great as possible. After a year has passed, they next do as follows. They take the most trusted of the rest of the king's servants, and these are native-born Scythians, for only those whom he tells to do serve the king, and none of the Scythians have servants bought by money, and strangle 50 of these, and 50 of their best horses, and empty and clean the bellies of them all, fill them with chaff, and sew them up again. Then they fasten half a wheel to 2 posts, the hollow upward, and the other half to the pair of posts, until many posts thus prepared are planted in the ground, and after driving thick stakes lengthways through the horses' bodies to their necks, they place the horses up on the wheels, so that the wheel in front supports the horses' forequarters, and the wheel behind takes the weight of the belly by the hindquarters, and the forelegs and hind legs hung free, and putting bridles and bits in the horses' mouths, they stretch the bridles to the front and fasten them with pegs. Then they take each one of the 50 strangled young men and mount him on the horse. Their way of doing it is to drive an upright stake through each body, passing up alongside the spine to the neck, leaving enough of the stake projecting below to be fixed in a hole made in the other stake, which passes through the horse. So, having set the horsemen of this fashion around the tomb, they ride away. This is the way they bury their kings. All other Scythians, when they die, are laid in wagons and carried about among their friends by their nearest of kin. Each receives them and entertains the retinue hospitably, setting before the dead man about as much of the fare as he serves to the rest. All but the kings are carried about like this for 40 days, and then buried. After the burial the Scythians cleanse themselves as follows. They anoint and wash their heads, and for their bodies set up 3 poles leaning together to a point, and cover these over with wool mats. Then, in the space so enclosed to the best of their ability, they make a pit in the centre beneath the poles and the mats and throw red-hot stones into it. They have hemp growing in their country, very like flax, except that the hemp is much thicker and taller. This grows both of itself and also by their cultivation, and the Thracians even make garments of it which are very like linen. No one, unless he were an expert in hemp, could determine whether they were hempen or linen. Whoever has never seen hemp before will think the garment linen. The Scythians then take the seed of this hemp, and crawling in under the mats, throw it on the red-hot stones, where it smoulders and sends forth such fumes that no Greek vapour bath could surpass it. The Scythians howl in their joy at the vapour bath. This serves them instead of bathing, for they never wash their bodies with water. But their women pound cypress and cedar and frankincense wood on a rough stone, adding water also, and with the thick stuff thus pounded they anoint their bodies and faces, as a result of which, not only does a fragrant scent come from them, but when on the 2nd day they take off the ointment, their skin becomes clear and shining. But as regards foreign customs, the Scythians, like others, very much shun practising those of any other country, and particularly of Hellas, as was proved in the case of Anacharsis, and also of Siles. For when Anacharsis was coming back to the Scythian country after having seen much of the world in his travels, and given many examples of his wisdom, he sailed through the Hellespont and put in at Cyzicus, where, finding the Cyzicenes celebrating the feast of the Mother of the Gods with great ceremony, he vowed to this same mother that if he returned to his own country safe and sound, he would sacrifice to her as he saw the Cyzicenes doing, and establish a nightly rite of worship. So when he came to Scythia, he hid himself in the country called Woodland, which is beside the race of Achilles, and is all overgrown with every kind of timber. Hidden there, Anacharsis celebrated the goddess's ritual with exactness, carrying a small drum and hanging images about himself. Then some Scythians saw him doing this and told the king, Saulius, who, coming to the place himself, and seeing Anacharsis performing these rites, shot an arrow at him and killed him. And now the Scythians, if they are asked about Anacharsis, say they have no knowledge of him. This is because he left his country for Hellas, and followed the customs of strangers. But according to what I heard from Timnes, the deputy for Areopithes, Anacharsis was an uncle of Idanthyrsus, king of Scythia, and he was the son of Nereus, son of Lycus, son of Spargopithes. Now if Anacharsis was truly of this family, then let him know he was slain by his own brother, for Idanthyrsus was the son of Saulius, and it was Saulius who killed Anacharsis. It is true that I have heard another story told by the Peloponnesians, namely, that Anacharsis had been sent by the king of Scythia and had been a student of the ways of Hellas, and after his return told the king who sent him that all Greeks were keen for every kind of learning, except the Lacedaemonians, but that these were the only Greeks who spoke and listened with discretion. But this is a tale pointlessly invented by the Greeks themselves, and, be this as it may, the man was put to death as I have said. End of Volume 2, Part 3.